the only district with two schools of veterinary medicine, although one's licensed to Harrogate. Virginia Tech always tells me that. They're not licensed in Virginia. And I say, yeah, but I've been there, and it is in my district. That being said, I now recognize Mr. Carter of Georgia for 5 minutes of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to wave on to this subcommittee. And thank y'all for being here. This is extremely important. Professionally, I'm a pharmacist, and I have witnessed over the years the excessive use of antibiotics that's led to a lot of this, and it's been a concern for many years. I am always in awe of the advancements that we've made in research and development. You know, I started practicing pharmacy in 1980 when I was 10 years old, by the way. But anyway, I have seen nothing short of miracles, and I mean that sincerely. Nothing short of miracles as a result of research and development. And so I'm a big fan of the pharmaceutical manufacturers from that aspect of it, but I'm very, very concerned about the antimicrobial resistance and about the overuse of antibiotics. I get it. I know the pressure that physicians are under when you got a mother who's just been struggling with a child's ear infection and is just demanding that they, and no one was as demanding as my wife whenever she took our sons in. And so I get it and understand that, but this is something, so I'm glad and I'm glad that this subcommittee is looking at that and that our full committee is looking at it because it needs to be addressed. We had an example just 6 months ago where we had some contaminated eye drops that were causing highly resistant eye infections. And this was a never-before-seen strain of bacteria that left patients blind and in need of a corneal transplant. You know, that's the kind of thing we need to avoid in this country. That's why the time now to invest in the pipeline, and I get it. Look, I know we live in a capitalist society, and I know that pharmaceutical manufacturers are going to invest in the drugs that are going to give them and their investors, their stockholders, if you will, the biggest returns. I understand that, and I have a healthy respect for that, but that's where we in Congress need to be assisting and need to be making sure that we've got a pipeline out there of these antibiotics in particular, because they're not as profitable as maybe the cancer drugs are or some of the other drugs. And that's why I was a co-sponsor of the bipartisan Pasteur Act legislation last Congress, and while I am again this year in this session. Mr. Alderson, I wanted to ask you, in your testimony, you said that pull incentives like subscriptions are now needed. Can you dumb that down for me and tell me what pull incentives and subscriptions are?
Thank you for making the effort to be at this committee today and waving on. Certainly, you know, the language sometimes is too professorial, and I apologize for that. But for antibiotics, we don't really want the drug that sells to 1 million people or 10 million people, because that would represent a public health disaster. The best case is that infection control does a great job and everything else works perfectly, and we only need these new drugs for a small number of patients. Now, in some disease areas, that they would then charge $1 million for that drug for a small number of patients, and that's how the company makes money. In antibiotics, we really don't want the $1 million drug. The Pasteur Act or subscriptions tries to pay for the value to society for this drug, even if the volume, especially in early years, is quite low. So the company goes away, not bankrupt. We don't have any incentive to overuse it, but it's there when we need it for the patients who need it. And the last thing I'll say is that for Carbex, the companies we support, the companies that are doing all the innovation in this space, the average size, about 20 full-time employees. Big Pharma has generally left. It's tiny startup companies that are doing a lot of the innovative work.
Right. You articulated that well. Thank you for that. That's important for people to understand, and thank you for that explanation. Ms. Jezik, in your testimony, you described the overuse of antibiotics. Through your research, have you uncovered any reason for the overuse of antibiotics, besides what I mentioned in my experiences as a pharmacist?
I think there are a lot of reasons, and I think oftentimes when a patient presents and they're very, very ill, you don't know right away what is infecting them, but because hours can matter in treating an infectious disease, you need to treat them right away empirically while you wait for the test results from diagnostics to come back. I think we also don't have enough experts who really understand the best ways to use our antibiotics. So a lot of inappropriate antibiotic use is giving someone the wrong antibiotic or keeping them on it for the wrong duration. And so making sure that we have more people who are trained in how to use antibiotics is critical.
So give them a standing prescription so the mother won't be calling every 15 minutes.
I was that mom
Been
too,
there,
I get
been
it.
there and done that. Listen, I know. So thank y'all. This is extremely, extremely important. And I want to compliment you and applaud you for what you're doing. I know this firsthand. And Mr. Chairman, again, I want to thank you for this hearing, and it's vitally important. So thank y'all. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back and appreciate it. And let me say to the witnesses, we appreciate you being here. It's been a great panel. Everybody's been engaged and passionate, and even with our technical difficulties and vote series taking place, it says a lot when you have members coming back and the vote has been over for